Several astrologers are saying that the felon's life is in danger. And what's going on with Putin's health? And what's going on with Netanyahu's health? Let's look into all three of those things. Welcome to Scrying Out Loud. My name is Trevor. First off, a huge thank you to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. If you watch the videos and you're not subscribed, I'd really appreciate you hitting the subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything and it really helps the algorithm. Thank you to everybody who likes, watches, comments on the videos. Thank you to everybody that promotes the channel, whether it's through your comments on this channel or comments on other channels. I've heard both of those things going on, so huge thank you there. And if you've donated money to the channel, a big, big thank you. Okay, so several astrologers have pointed to April 4th as being a possible danger time for the felon. Now, of course, astrology isn't meant to be the exact day that something happens. It can be, a week, a month, or so after. Um, we'll look into that. But I really want to look into Putin's health and Netanyahu's health. A reading probably a couple months ago, we kind of got that all three of these individuals were going to see kind of a downfall around the same time. And that really makes a lot of sense given how they're interconnected with um, certain activities. So let's first start with Netanyahu. We'll just do um, I think a 9 card spread for Netanyahu and Putin. And I think we'll do that for the felon too. And we'll probably clarify with the second deck. So what can you tell us about Netanyahu? Netanyahu's well-being, his safety. I've always felt like he's going to be out of power, like, before the end of this year. Netanyahu. Maybe the image of the Four of Pentacles, which sometimes can be interpreted as like the miser card. To me, I think the interpretation from the image in the water is more like he's holding some really tight secrets, like he's keeping things very close to his vest or chest or whatever that expression is. Chest. Let's see. That in the eye. Okay, so we get the Page of Wands, fiery messages. I think this is indicative of starting up turmoil again in Gaza. We get the Empress card. He's being influenced by Russia, but in like a really back channel way that isn't really obvious. That might get exposed at some point in the future. I've said this many times. Israel and Russia are not allies, and they're not going to be allies. Uh, but Netanyahu and Putin, while they might not be friendly people, they might have some goals in common, especially when it comes to territorial aggression. We get the Wheel of Fortune turning for him. We get pausing, suspension, rethinking. I think this is support for him starting to waver a little bit. Yeah, at the center of the reading is the Eight of Swords, which is about confinement. Now, this could be physical confinement, like imprisonment. Um, I don't think that would be terribly shocking, but this is more likely the courts and people coming together to take away his power so that he's confined and can't do any more damage. We get the Knight of Swords, things moving quickly. Yeah, the Five of Cups, loss. some sort of loss. It could be an electoral loss if there's a snap election. Um, it could also be a physical loss. I don't think his health is great. With the Queen of Pentacles, some sort of offer about money and holding the money really close to the chest, right? Like the money's the secret, right? The Pentacle's the secret. And the secret has to do with Russia. And then we get the Six of Swords, movement away from trouble, perhaps. Underneath, we get the Ten of Pentacles, money, the inheritance card. There's some cards here that kind of point to some health problems. Let's just clarify with another deck. We clarify the spread for Netanyahu. So the way you would read this is going down this way. A fiery message leads to confinement and then movement. Loss leads to confinement, and then it's up to the fates to decide. And the energies around are pausing, suspension, aggression, holding secrets tight to the vest, and Russia. That kind of makes sense. So this is just the Rider Waite Tarot. This is the Light Seers Tarot. Netanyahu. I feel like there's some sort of event that's going to happen and not too long from now that's going to change the trajectory of things in Israel. We get the Page of Wands and the Page of Wands. This happens to me all the time when I clarify. So, some sort of fiery message is really the big key. We have the Page of Swords, a spy in the camp, and that's over Russia. So perhaps somebody he trusts is going to reveal the secret ongoings that he has with Russia. I think it's just kind of a sort of a perverse gentleman's agreement of, you know, we'll help get the felon into office if you kind of turn the other way and help the Arab nations turn the other way as we take territory from Syria and from Gaza. I think that's kind of what it is all about, the quid pro quo. We get the Eight of Wands. So when the fates turn, they're going to turn quickly. The pausing and suspension leads to the Fool or a new beginning. People rethinking their support, rethinking what the government is doing, and wanting to change course. Yeah, the Eight of Swords is clarified by the Knight of Swords. So the confinement is because they can't keep up with everything that's going out. The motorcycle's running ahead. The guy's chasing the motorcycle, right? He can't keep up with it. There's going to be too much coming out that they're just not going to be able to keep up with all the scandals. And they might seem minor in the beginning, but they'll turn into much bigger things. Yeah, the Knight of Swords, this ready for battle leads to loss. The overall action that has happened in Gaza is also lost, but I think it leads to his downfall in the sense of the way history will remember him, and also in the sense of perhaps even his health, but in the sense of like his political future. And loss is the Five of Cups over here is clarified by the Eight of Cups. So loss leads to people walking away. Something happens to where if loss of his reputation, loss of his health leads to people walking away, wanting a new direction. The secrets, the Queen of Pentacles here has to do with some sort of partnership. And again, I think it's with Putin, for entertainment purposes only. And we get the Six of Swords and the Queen of Pentacles moving away from troubled waters, perhaps uh, moving away from Russia, or maybe even relying on Russia to get him to some safety if that comes to that. We get the Two of Wands underneath. So it's all about crossroads. There's big changes going on in the world in general. That's going to happen through September. Huge, huge changes. Things will start to get better um, around August, I think. So, yeah, I don't think it's Netanyahu is particularly in a good spot. So I think the war, or I don't even know if war is the right word for it, the atrocities in Gaza will will catch up to him. And yeah, I think people are going to want to change in direction, especially now that things economically are going to go crazy with all these tariffs and retaliatory tariffs. And there's going to be a lot of um, craziness before the financial situation calms down. Okay, let's look at Putin. Can you tell us about Putin? Is he in danger? Is his health in danger? Is he having health problems? I sense that all those things are true. I sense he has some health problems. And I've read on this before. I think somebody really wants him out. Um, that the limousine blew up in the streets. I had predicted that in a previous reading about car bombings in Moscow or in Russia. So I always felt like he would probably be unalived by somebody. But that might not be reported that way, right? We can't really trust the information that comes out. So we'll do the same sort of spread for all three of these questions. Okay, the seeds have been planted. The Seven of Pentacles. Walking away, people walking away from him, turning their back on him, or perhaps him turning his back on somebody else, which gives them the opportunity to metaphorically and possibly literally stab him in the back. Would be surprised if we see the Ten of Swords. I kind of sense that energy. Again, holding things tight to his vest, the secrets that aren't really that big as secrets anymore, that that they're controlling that he's controlling the felon. Unlikely partnerships with the Lover's card. This is a little bit of the Netanyahu energy to it. Something is inevitable. That's in the center of the reading. Something is inevitable. It'll be interesting to see what's inevitable when we clarify. Three of Wands, Knight of Wands, messages coming forward that are very passionate, emotional, that don't make him look well. This could be some stories from the front lines of his aggression to Ukraine. Something about money coming forward, the Page of Pentacles. So a message about money. We get the Emperor, abuse of power. It's also the card for the presidency. I don't feel like this is the presidency in the US. I think this is his leadership and the abuse of power that he's committing. And then really heavy burdens. So we have the Seven of Pentacles up here. So planting seeds lead to something that's inevitable, and that causes really heavy burdens, or possibly an end to a cycle, right? Tense can be ends. Something coming forward about money leads to something inevitable, which is why he's holding it close to his chest. That's not normally the interpretation of the Queen of Pentacles. It just feels that way today. Um, and then the environment around us, he has all these sort of unlikely partnerships that, he doesn't really trust the other person. The person doesn't really trust him. There's a bunch of those. Turning his back on somebody or somebody turning their back on him, or people just walking away, like losing support. Although it's really hard to know how much support he really has. Some fiery messages, probably about abusive power. Those are the energies around. So let's clarify those. Can you clarify these cards? What are they telling us? Putin, Vladimir Putin. You see the Ten of Swords like very clearly in the water. I think that's what this is about here is he does something that gives somebody an opportunity to, I think, metaphorically stab him in the back. I don't think literally stab him in the back, although that could lead to some physical issues. It tells about Putin. Clarify these. The seeds planted lead to poverty or lead to him being left out in the cold. Doubts about his ability to continue in his role. Yeah, maybe that is true. We get the Five of Cups. This is about loss. It could be about, loss of health, loss of life. Um, Walking away from something leads to loss. And isn't this interesting? The Two of Cups on top of the Queen of Pentacles. Whatever's being held closely, it's about a partnership, whatever that secret is. Lovers is clarified by the King of Swords. So the unlikely partnerships are there because there's like a mutual benefit. And whatever is inevitable will be too much for him to handle. So whatever's inevitable leads to the Two of Pentacles, which is the card for like juggling money, but juggling overseas interests. Also, just too much being on your plate. So whatever's inevitable leads to him dealing with stuff that's just too much. We get the Eight of Pentacles on the Knight of Wands. If one plan doesn't work, try another. And on the Page of Pentacles, we get the Hanged Man, pausing in suspension. So something coming forward about money leads to a bunch of pausing and suspension. This could just be about the worldwide economy, causes people to stop spending in Russia, which causes even more of an economic meltdown than what's already going on there. The abuse of power is clarified by the King of Cups. So whatever the abuse of power is, when it comes out, it's going to be really looked down upon because the stories about it are going to be quite emotional. I think this has to do with the conscripts and the North Korean soldiers and the Russian soldiers, like the stories that they're going to tell from when the conflict kind of ends or when his aggression ends, and how it really wasn't for anything. And the heavy burdens leads to moderation. It makes me feel like he goes away. I guess we didn't look what was underneath. Underneath is the Chariot card. That's interesting. This could be the secret could be about the Chariot card, which is, for entertainment purposes only, the card that seems to be describing human trafficking lately. Um, and underneath here, we get the King of Wands, passionate leadership coming forward in some sort of sense. Um, like there might be some sort of opposition voice that, like a Navalny, that comes forward. So, yeah, I think he's right to be scared of people wanting to take him out because whatever's inevitable is too much for him to handle. And whatever he's walking away from, or whoever's walking away from, leads to loss. So there's something to that for sure. Okay, let's do the felon. I think we'll do the same thing, but I think we'll throw an extra layer on it with the Toth deck. Okay, just what can you tell us about the felon? Is his life in danger? Are these astrological events putting his life in danger? Is he having health issues? Is he fearing revolt over the tariffs? So in the water, I just very distinct image of a laptop with like a big arrow going down. I think that's referring to the economy. I think as the economy, like his reputation of being good for the economy, as that like gets completely destroyed, which I have zero doubt that that's going to happen. Um, that's going to be a lot for him to take. So we get confinement in the upper left corner, the Eight of Swords. This feels like a mental confinement, like not being able to get out of your own head. I think that's about his health. I think that's like just a sign of dementia, always repeating the same things over and over again. We get the Hierophant, we get the courts, the Pope, the church. And this is in the environment around. I think he's going to have a hard time dealing with the courts because they're going to rule against him in almost every step of the way. Wouldn't surprise me if the courts do something about the tariffs as well. Although once the retaliatory tariffs are in place, I don't know how that whole mess works out. We'll have to get into that a little bit later. With the Nine of Pentacles in the upper right, this is about having everything that you need, wealth, abundance. But I feel like that's going away. I think it'll somehow be related to losing that. The High Priestess is also in the environment around things that we can't see, things behind the scenes that we don't know about. I think this has to do with his health. I think it also has to do with the fact that probably the majority of congressional Republicans are completely opposed to everything he's doing right now. They just don't have a spine to stand for it. At the center, giving and receiving of money, that makes perfect sense. The tariffs, in particular, trade. Um, yeah, and the environment around, we get deceit, deception, thievery. I mean, how often do we pull the Seven of Swords for the felon? I mean, I guess it's why we call him the felon, is because he gets the Seven of Swords all the time. So with the three amigos, That's interesting there. Point that out in just a bit. Circles of support around money, probably Musk, Netanyahu, or Musk, Putin, and the felon. And the environment around, we get ill health, the Four of Swords, the Minor Arcana Death card. And we get emotional messages coming forward. So it's kind of like the dementia, the being trapped in his head, the Eight of Swords, this being confined mentally, not being able to think things through properly, led to all these tariffs. You know, they're not good business decisions, they're not good economic decisions. They're, outrageous, and some um, things like 43% tariffs on things from Vietnam, for example, which probably is going to really affect like companies like Nike, like these really kind of American companies. So his mental illness leads to the tariffs, which leads to emotional stories coming forward. These can be stories of people struggling with money, could be stories of foreclosures on houses, small businesses not being able to pay their bills, farmers not being able to keep their farms, things along those lines. What's interesting in this direction is these are all pentacles, but we go 369, which is like the Tesla representation. Nikola Tesla had this like way of manifesting where you write something three times in the morning, then six times in the afternoon, and then nine times in the evening. Because three plus six is nine, six plus nine is 15, which gets one plus five is six. Three plus nine is 12, which one and two add to three. That's the idea behind it. So, anyhow, the three amigos kind of were okay with the tariffs, which leads to perhaps them getting a lot of money, but nobody else. In the environment around, though, we have the courts going against him, things that we can't see behind the scenes affecting things. And we have ill health, which also relates to the dementia thing, but this could also be something else with regard to his health. And then we have deception. And it's only a matter of time before deception gets revealed, right? Underneath, we have the King of Swords. So ultimately, the truth is going to come forward. Logic is going to, you know, um, start to come back to rule decision making in the United States. Probably not for several months, but okay. So tell us about that. Let's clarify. It just feels like the tariffs are his undoing. It's like I don't think he can handle the cult really turning on him. And that's what's going to happen. I mean, we'll start. I don't think you should believe every poll, especially, like the Rasmussen, the RGM polls that show that his job approval rating is above 50%. I don't think those are true. I don't think it's much below, I don't think it's below 40, but I think it will be. I think in the near future, it'll be around 35, maybe even lower. As people start to realize that prices are going up. And the Fed, I don't see the Fed cutting interest rates because prices are going up. And the way you combat that is with higher interest rates, which is just a really bad combination for everything. So now if you want to buy a car, the car's, $10,000 more than it was going to be. And the interest rate on the car loan is going to be 7% instead of 2. Just, it's a bad combination economically. Yeah, it just feels like this is the beginning of the end. At least the beginning of the end of people thinking that he's uh, good for the country. Yeah, so the confinement's led by something coming to the surface. This sure feels like a health revelation. So the moon clarifies the Eight of Swords. The courts are clarified with the Eight of Wands. They're going to act quickly, and if they start, defying court orders, I mean, technically, the federal courts have control over the U.S. Marshals, even though that's part of the DOJ. Um, I think the U.S. Marshals will follow court orders, not the DOJ, would be my guess. The Knight of Wands is about victory. Victory clarifies the Nine of Pentacles. Get this out of the way. So somebody feels victorious. We'll see if they still do after we get to the third deck. Yeah, the thing behind the scenes that we can't see is death. This could be the end of a dark cycle, but it also could just be the end. And to me, it feels like the end. Yeah, there's something wrong with his heart. I mean, we got this again. The three of Swords was in the center of the reading the last time that we did the 9 card spread on his health. There's something wrong with his heart. And, the tariffs exasperate that. They add to the stress, which creates more issues with his heart. And with the death being in the environmental round, I don't think that's a good combo. Something is inevitable. The deceit is inevitable. But I think really the way to read that is that it's inevitable that the deceit is going to come out, that people are going to realize that they were fooled. I think somebody put in the comments yesterday or the day before that, really nobody should have been fooled. He told us exactly what he was going to do. That's absolutely 100% correct. That's why it was so terrifying uh, that nobody was paying attention. Like, I mean, the amount of knowledge that a voter takes into the voting booth is not always the same amount of knowledge that you take into the voting booth. So we need to remember that. Yeah, the magician, the Three of Pentacles, the Three Amigos, Elon Musk, the magician. The magician's starting to weigh on him too. I think this is our victory. I don't think this is the felon's victory. We'll talk about that in just a second. Ill health, needing to defend himself. I think something gets revealed and he's going to have to defend staying in power. And these emotional messages lead to a new beginning. And underneath, again, we got the Three Amigos celebrations and support with the Three of Cups, but it's kind of in the shadows. It's like starting to dissipate. So confinement, like the dementia is coming to the surface. That's the way I'm reading that, which is why we got the tariffs. But the tariffs are causing stress, which is going to exasperate some sort of heart condition that we've known about for a while, at least in the readings. The emotional messages about the effects of the tariffs lead to some sort of new beginning. And I think it's a positive new beginning. Not that the tariffs are positive, but the final outcome is, I think there's going to be some resolutions around that are good. So the Three Amigos, including Elon Musk, they led to the tariffs, which is exasperating the heart condition, which leads us to have things that we need. I think this is like the repairing of democracy and victory. In the environment around things that we can't see and death, and the courts acting quickly to stop things. The deceit, it's inevitable that the deceit and the deception comes out. Their real motives are going to come clear. And ill health is going to lead them to have to defend themselves on why he's still in power. Okay, let's just throw some one more line with the, or one more layer with the Toth deck. It's also the, oh, danger. Nothing seems to indicate like, of anything unnatural as far as health. But you never know. There's a lot of anger out there, so I think it would be bad for the country if something violent were to happen because I think it would lead to him kind of being made into a martyr. I don't think that would be good for anybody. All right, so confinement, things coming to the surface, shocking new beginnings, Ace of Cups. The court's acting fast to stop what's going on, leads to the Prince of Discs or the Page of Pentacles. Uh, Something about money. I think it ends some of the tariffs. I don't think it ends them all, but I think it ends the ones that he used some obscure law to enact because I don't think he actually had the power to do this legally. Okay, we get everything like democracy saved, we get victory. That's clarified by the Knight of Cups. Yeah, emotional stories. These will be stories that we tell years from now about the turmoil of this time with the Knight of Cups. Okay, things behind the scenes and death gets clarified by peace. This is the Two of Swords. Um, so behind the scenes, death gets clarified by peace. When he goes, things settle down. Like, I don't, you know, I don't trust JD Vance to do anything correctly, but he would probably try to negotiate out of these tariffs, right? Because they're not doing anybody any good. So the tariffs lead to uh, further worsening of a heart condition, which leads to the truth. So, like, there's like an episode that happens, and this is in a reading, I don't know, maybe a month ago, where I saw him collapse, and it felt like he was having a stroke, possibly a heart attack. I think something like that happens, and the truth comes out about his health, and that's why they have to defend it. So it's inevitable that the deceit comes out, which is wow, clarified by the Ace of Wands. That's three aces from the Toth deck. It's about new leadership. So I think that's when Vance probably takes over, is when the deceit about his health comes out. I think that's what it's about. The Three of Pentacles and Musk gets clarified by Musk. So, and uh, the Four of Swords and the Seven of Wands gets clarified by the Prince of Cups. So bombshells and surprises. We don't even know the tip of the iceberg of how bad his health is and how long it's been bad and how long they've managed to keep it a secret. Emotional messages and new beginnings gets clarified by valor. So some people are going to step up to help us get the new beginnings. It could be in Congress, although I kind of doubt that. And then under all, under the deck, we get the Fool. So new beginnings. So everything eventually will be fine. It's going to be terrible for several months. I want to mislead you and say that everything's going to be great soon. I don't see that. But I do think around, like August, September, October, things really start to improve because I think he's gone. And once he's gone, you know, nobody wants a bad economy. Vance is an opportunist. He will try to fix things for his own political well-being, not because he cares about little people, but because he cares about votes. So, yeah. Anyhow, is his life in danger from, outside forces. I don't see that, although I have kind of felt that in the past. I don't see that here in this spread, but I think his life is in danger. I think that's true. I don't think it's from an outside force. I just think it's from a health condition. Um, but it could be exasperated by stress, and that ultimately leads to some sort of significant event to where, he's gone. So, all right. Thank you for watching. I'll be back with another video soon.